Hello and welcome back to the Life After Losses video blog, where we're continuing to delve into the purpose framework, which is something that I introduced in my book, Grief Recovery for Adults. And as a reminder, purpose was designed to empower and enlighten you toward a more fulfilling life experience, following a loss, or in my case, losses. Structure is designed to help you find a renewed sense of purpose in your life on your terms. So this is entry number 185. It's part 2 of 7. You unload your emotional baggage. Grief is unpredictable and doesn't care if it's a good time for you. It shows up, makes itself at home, and it messes with your emotions. It's raw, real, and messy. And that's perfectly normal. Maybe you cried in the grocery aisle because it hit you. You're shopping for one. Or perhaps you're laughing with friends when a shadow of guilt pulls you under, making you wonder if you should even be enjoying yourself. Now, grief isn't neat. It doesn't come in manageable doses. Grief is the midnight tears, the anger at minor inconveniences, the laughter that turns into crying because of a memory. It's forgetting to eat or sleeping all day or staring at the ceiling all night. Now, grief can make you feel like you've lost your mind. Widow's brain is the term you might hear. You might misplace things, forget appointments, or wear your shirt inside out. You might talk about your loved one as if they're right beside you, and you might avoid places filled with painful memories. What feels like insanity is a normal part of grieving, and it's your mind and body trying to figure out how to live in a world that's changed. All this mess, this roller coaster of emotions, it's okay. It's normal. Grieving isn't something you can control or predict. It doesn't follow schedules or societal expectations. It just is. And what you're feeling, the good, the bad, the ugly, is part of the process. It's likely that you've not lost your mind, and there will be good days and bad. On those tough days, you need to remind yourself of a few things. 1, it's okay not to be okay. 2, your feelings are valid, no matter how messy. And number 3, say I'm doing the best I can, and that's enough. When the mess feels overwhelming, seeking help is okay. In fact, I encourage it, and we recently talked about sharing stories plenty of times. Talk to a friend, join a support group, or find a counselor. Sharing the mess can lighten the load. I have a section in the book that's titled, Grief is a Messy Mess of a Mess. Your grief is messy, but your love, resilience, and the ability to survive the most challenging times are within that mess. When the waves hit, let them come. Cry over the kitchen sink, laugh until you cry, and remember, you're not alone. Grief might be a mess, but it's our mess, and we'll get through it, one messy, unpredictable day at a time. In the book, I use the analogy of carrying your emotions in a backpack. The more stuff we put into it, the heavier it gets. It digs into our shoulders and we hunch over. But the load gets heavier and heavier because we would rather avoid, and see last week's entry, than address the issues. We sidestep our emotions by throwing ourselves into work, binge watching TV, or picking up a new hobby to keep our minds occupied. And I'm certainly guilty of doing those things. We plaster on a smile and insist we're fine when asked how we're doing because we want to avoid facing our grief or making others uncomfortable in our grief. I learned this, that avoidance might seem harmless, but it does come at a cost. It's a lot like building a dam to hold back a river. The pressure keeps mounting and mounting, and if we're not careful, it can crack, leading to unexpected outbursts. Avoiding these emotional drains, robbing us of our genuine peace and ability to heal. So, what happens when we finally unzip that backpack and we start unloading that emotional baggage? At first, it's like taking a deep breath and gulping for air after being underwater for too long. It feels like that fire hose I talked about last week. Expressing our grief is incredibly relieving. We acknowledge that we're hurting, and that's okay. This venting can take many forms: talking with someone we trust, crying in the shower, or even screaming into a pillow. It's all valid. The relief from venting isn't just emotional, it's physical. Our sleep improves, our appetites return, and that constant feeling of being on edge fades. The link between our physical and emotional well-being is well documented. And speaking of venting, I remember one day at work, at a particularly vulnerable time, when one of my coworkers, Rose, asked if I was doing okay. I looked at her, my eyes bloodshot from either drinking too much the night before or crying moments ago, and either were possible, and said, "Do you want the truth, or are you just asking to be polite?" I had run out of politeness and pasting that fine smile on my face. Instead, I opted for honesty. "I'll take the truth," she bravely answered. "I don't want to do this anymore," I told her. I wept at work, finally letting some of that out to another person. After hiding my emotions behind a bottle for a while, I learned that finding healthy ways to express these emotions is vital. There are some techniques that can help you unload that emotional baggage, such as talking it out. Sometimes a good chat is the best release. Talking about what you're going through, it can be incredibly cathartic, whether it's with a friend, family member, or a therapist. It worked with Rose. Creative expressions are another option. Channeling your emotions into something that's creative can be a powerful outlet. Painting, writing, and playing music, they let you express your grief in ways that words simply can't. And physical activity, movement, can be a great way to release pent-up emotions. Movement helps release endorphins. Those are our feel-good hormones, lifting our spirits and helping us cope. There's mindfulness and meditation. These practices help us to sit with our emotions without judgment. Acknowledge them as they come and go. Letting out our grief and giving voice to our pain is not a sign of weakness. If anything, I believe it's actually the polar opposite. It's a brave step toward healing. It's recognizing that to move forward, we have to empty that backpack every now and again. We have to perceive that reality. Remember last week, grief is complex and unpredictable. Unloading your emotional baggage is crucial for healing. And if you're seeking more insights and some practical tools to help you navigate this journey, consider exploring my book, The Grief Recovery for Adults, and learning more about the Purpose Framework. It's a companion for these difficult days, offering guidance and support as you work through your emotions and find your path to healing. So next week, we're going to talk about the R in the Purpose Framework, reaching out for support. Until then.